He's my flesh and blood. You're just a close relative.
Our guest this hour is a musician and actor that I'm sure is best known to many of you as Little Ricky on TV's I Love Lucy. At the time, he was billed as Richard Keith, but Keith Thibodeaux joins us today to talk about his time on I Love Lucy, as well as his long and successful music career. Keith Thibodeaux, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I love it. Thank you.
You know, as I was doing my research on you, I was trying to find that moment, that origin story of how you picked up the drums and became a drummer. But it seems like you started so young, I could almost say that you've been drumming since birth?
Yeah, pretty much. I started playing with knives and forks like everybody else that starts that young, and then graduated to some tin trash cans in the backyard. And then eventually I got a little play set, then I got a real set, and then it just began to go on roll from there.
You initially were performing with Horace Heidt, right?
Yeah, Horace Heidt is a big band leader who had a show in the 50s, and Mr. Heidt discovered people like Art Carney and Gordon McRae. Al Hirt was his first chair trumpet. So he was a very talented, very well-known persona in the 50s. I actually had a chance to jam with Lionel Hampton on the Horace Heidt show.
Wow.
When I toured with the band for about a year.
So how old were you around that time?
About 4, believe it or not. 4 years old, can you believe it?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was like, what? I mean, are your memories vivid of that time? I mean, that's pretty eventful, big stuff, but are they vivid or is it hazy with the passage of time?
You know, what I can remember, the vivid parts are being on the show, traveling, of course, with my father, going from town to town, getting on, airplanes and talking with the stewardesses and going up into the pilot's cockpit and showing me, how to fly the plane. It was those kind of things, yeah. But I do remember some things.
So was your reputation as a kid drummer, is that what brought you to the attention of Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball?
Well, no, they were having a general audition for the show. I Love Lucy was looking for a Little Ricky, and they had about 200 little boys that they had interviewed, and a friend of my father's asked him if, I'd like to try out for this big part because I look like I might be able to fit in pretty good with him, So my dad, said Keith's got no acting ability. He's a little drummer, and this is a big television show, the I Love Lucy show. And I don't know. I mean, we'll try. I mean, nothing, it can't hurt but try. So we went down to the set and to the Desi Lou set that the I Love Lucy show was filmed in. And Lucy was there, in her red hair glory, and she looked at me and my dad. She said, well, he's cute, but what does he do? And my dad said he plays the drums. And so she said, well, there's a set of drums over there. Let him go over there and play. So I started playing, and then eventually all the guys started coming around on the set, and Desi himself came over and started playing with me on the drums, on the tom-tom, and after a while he stood up and laughed, and he said, I think we found Little Ricky. So, I was able to play the drums on the show, and I was able to sing. I had I was musical. And so that fit in real well with the I Love Lucy format.
Did you develop a closeness with either Desi or Lucy?
I was closer to Desi, curiously enough. Everybody thinks that, Lucy's the big one, and she definitely was somebody that I got to know quite well and loved in a funny kind of way. And Desi was a little bit more on my level. He was from a Cuban family, and he was a foreigner. I was born in Louisiana, being of Cajun heritage. And so very, very family-oriented type place. And the fact that we both played percussion, that put us in the same understanding. And he was always very kind to me, always gave me presents whenever he would give his children, Lucy and Desi Jr., anything, and I was around, he would always include me in on it. You know, just a very nice, generous guy. He did have an alcohol problem, so that's part of the problem. But Lucy and Desi were a very different couple, and very they had troubled lives, and you know, at home. But on the set, it was like, you know, gold. You know, it was like
Right.
They were amazing. You know, and it was just very professional, very well run. Everybody knew what they were doing. We had the best in Hollywood working on that show.
Ricky Ricardo Jr. and his Dixieland Band.
I was just a little drummer. So the acting part and the speaking part, you know, I would have to learn my lines from my dad, and he would tell me how to say my lines, and you know, the show was, you know, as people know, filmed in front of a live audience. There was about probably 200 or 300 people in the audience every episode. So we conducted it like a play. So it was one of those kind of things where you had to keep going, and you couldn't stop and say, oh, I forgot that line, and here we go, you know. So there was a lot of pressure for me to do that. And I actually ended up stuttering at one point because the pressure, and, you know, my dad, you know, he eventually started working at Desilu, but it was very, very, I was very intertwined with the Arnazes and the I Love Lucy show, and it's like everything sort of depended on me. I had to do a good job, you know. So
Yeah.
that was a little bit of the pressure as a kid.
So I know you continued acting, and you appeared in other shows, the Andy Griffith Show most notably, but rock and roll's happening, and you, in 1969, you join a group called David and the Giants.
That's
And
right.
as I understand it, you're with the band till about 1977. Then you become a Christian, you leave the band, but then the rest of the band become Christians, and then you wind up coming back. Is that how that story goes?
Well, actually, a lot of this happened in '74 when I got down to the end of my rope. I was what is now known as being like clinically depressed. I was suicidal. I was, you know, I'd gotten into drugs pretty heavily when I was about 17, 18 years old. I started to experiment with drugs and did the things that everybody did, you know, in the late 60s. And music was a big part of that. So I joined David and the Giants, and they were a very popular, very well-known band in the South. And we just did our thing, but that thing didn't really satisfy me. There was always something missing in my life, and I was always trying to find out who I was. I would, you know, this girl asked me one time to give her a quote, and I said, you know, she was getting quotes to put in a little journal or something. And I said, well, I didn't know what to say, so I said, I just want to be somebody. And when I said that, and she really said, wow, that's really amazing. And it was like, I didn't understand that, but I don't think she understood it either, because when you say I want to be somebody, you want to be somebody great. But at that point in my life, I just wanted to know who I was. I just didn't know who I was. I was like this. I wanted to know. I'd lost myself. And about this time, I really cried out to God. I was raised in a religious home, and but I shook my fist at God when my parents divorced, and that's the reason that I left Hollywood in the first place when I was 15 years old and moved back to Louisiana. And I just shook my fist at God, and I said, you know, you could have stopped this, God. You know, my parents divorcing, and you're going to pay for this. So really, I ended up paying for it, and I ended up really spiraling down, you know, experimented in the occult, dated witches, you know, all kind of weird stuff just to really find out who I was, and because I didn't know who I was. I cried out to God one night in Laurel, Mississippi, of all places, which is where the band was based. And on my waterbed, I cried out to God, and I said, God, I said, I've made a mess out of my life. I said, saved me out of this mess that I made in my life. And I said these words. I said, I'll serve you. And 2 weeks later, my mother invited me to a prayer meeting back home in Louisiana, and I had a revelation of Jesus Christ, and it just changed my life. And I had a vision, and the Bible opened up to me. I repented of my sins. I knew that Jesus is real, that he's alive right now, and he's more powerful than the whole universe can contain, and yet he's also has more love and is more love than the whole universe can contain. In this Jesus of that I saw, the Savior. And I went back to the guys in the band and I said, hey guys, there's more to God than what we've been told. I said Jesus is real, and I said we've got to change our music and start. We can keep our same style of music, which was rock, but change the lyrics to more godly lyrics. And of course, they just said, hey Keith, you'll get over it, ha ha ha.
Right.
You'll get over this. But I never did, and I kept talking about Jesus and just droning them on with the fact that they must be born again, and just amazingly enough, the whole band, David, Rayburn, and Claiborne, they're all brothers, by the way. There's a set of twins, and there's David, and they all came to the Lord in their own time. And it was about 1977, Ghosty, when they actually started playing little churches and little Christian music and using what they knew from the world and the rock music in a more of a worship set. So I ended up joining the band in '79 as a Christian, David and the Giants. And so that was something that I always had a vision for from the beginning back in 1974. And we ended up being a pioneering Christian CCM band, rock band, playing all over the U.S., Jamaica, England, back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And then we've since had some reunions, and we've recorded a couple albums, just putting out a new album called See You There by David and the Giants about a month ago.
Going back to the 80s for a moment, I saw you guys in 1983 because I believe you played a festival in Pennsylvania called Creation 83.
We did. Yeah, we did. We did.
I never put two and two together. That.
Are you serious?
Yes, I never. It was only until recently that I thought, wait a minute, you're the same Little Ricky from I Love Lucy? I never knew it. So was it promoted? Because I missed it.
Well, in those big rock, like Creation, big rock festivals and Fishnet and other festivals like that, there's so many people there. There's like, what was there, 50,000 people or something?
Yeah.
It doesn't lend itself too much to do that. But they did, that was known that I was Little Ricky, of course, I think. In that scenario, if you would have just seen us for that, maybe you wouldn't have known that, no.
No, well, at that time, I would have been 13, and I might have been swooning a little bit over Amy Grant, who... I think
everybody was swooning over Amy Grant, yeah.
Yeah, the power cut out, I think, as part of her set that night, and she managed it somehow and did a really good job. I should have known back in 1983 when I saw you. You had a great set.
You mean drum set?
No. I mean the set that you guys play. I remember enjoying it. What I remember, and maybe I'm wrong, but I remember it being a heavier sound live.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very. Yeah. That's where we kind of, sat in. Was that circle of rock. We were kind of a concert staple. I mean, we were, our concerts were very different than the records. Recording stuff didn't really bring out the energy of the band, but yeah, we loved playing live, and we still do.
Well, this has been great talking to you, and if someone wanted to hear that new record or keep up with what you're doing these days, where would they go to do that?
They can, I think they can find it on iTunes and I think Spotify and YouTube, Amazon, those kind of places as well. As well as I think CDs are available too for all the old guys.
Yeah.
CDs are like 33 records now.
Yes,
I guess.
exactly. Thank you so much for appearing on the show. I wish you all the best in the future, and I'm glad we had a chance to do this.
Well, thanks again for inviting me, and I'll look forward to hear from you in the future, brother.
Yesterday I was locked up